Welcome back to part 2 of our deep dive into Cuba Libre, the historical epic by our dear friend Elmore Leonard. When we last left you in part 1, Ben, caught up in all the action, falls back on some old habits. Let's rejoin the conversation, and once again, if you haven't heard part 1 yet, go listen to part 1 first, and then come back here. Here we go.
This is similar to, I'd referenced in when we talked about swag. The title swag came from a script treatment that Elmore had written for Michael Caine and Sean Connery called The Hawksbill Gang, and then it was called Swag. And the main action premise of that was these guys were going to go into Spain, which was in the middle of the Civil War, and they were going to go into a war-torn town and rob a bank because it had a huge amount of money. And so it's clearly an idea that Elmore had, kept kicking around in the 20 years since then. Mm-hmm. So this is war-torn town. There's a guy who's trying to go to a bank.
And he keeps trying, but they're apart, Amelia and Ben, but we do hear more about them, and we do hear, basically very quickly, Ben is telling her that he loves her, and she's worried about him, and he's trying to get back, and it's at this point too that we're introduced to another villain. It's about 70% of the way through the book, and it's kind of a classic Elmore left turn here. We find out that Tavalera has his own mistress, named Isabella Cattolica, and her brother Ozma is a former slave hunter, and he is a bad dude. Like, every side hates this guy. He's violent, but he gets the job done. Tavalera realizes that he cannot be present during the what do we even call it? The scam with the ransom money and Novus Crow on the train that's about to take place. So he hires this guy to keep an eye on the events, and then whoever gets the money at the end, swoop in and take it from them. Yeah. So that guy is Ozma, and we'll be spending some more time with him very soon. Yeah, he is, in all of Elmore's characters, one of the few even Raleigh, I wouldn't want to hang out with Raleigh necessarily. He's not so terrible. This guy's a bad guy.
He's like a murderer. Yeah, this guy's a murderer.
Yeah, and Tavalera is also. Let's be honest.
Yes.
So, but he's got some charm, and he decides in the middle because of he's also making the decision that Tavalera's making the decision that he's just going to kill Tyler. They want the money and all that, but he just wants to kill him, and so for all the trouble that he's making him go through. So Boudreaux has received the ransom note, and he has sent Novus Crow on the train with a sack full of money.
I love the part that Novus says that men would look at him like they knew what he had, because he's walking around with this hammock that's been wrapped around this big bundle of money. It actually reminded me of being on tour where, in the early days, we would all just kind of trade off who's holding the merch money. And sometimes it would be thousands of dollars in cash, and it's so insane that you do have that feeling everyone looking at me knows, that nobody knows. But I'm like, that's great. The Novus Crow is me in this scene.
Just one more similarity that you have with Raleigh Boudreaux's bodyguard. So he's on the train, and the train Tavalera's not on it, but it's being followed by Ozma. But also there are some of Tavalera's troops on it, ostensibly to make sure that the kidnapping, the ransom exchange goes correctly. Boudreaux doesn't know that Tavalera has this other plan as well. So Tavalera's playing at both sides. He's got some guys on
and speaking of both sides, we have Fuentes, Amelia, and Ben, who are trying to get the money. And they are opposite Islero's men.
The more we learn about Islero, the more we do get nervous about him.
Amelia has already doubted that he's going to give the money to his men. So
exactly.
She's recruited Ben, Tyler. They're going to split the money. Ben has recruited Virgil. So they're going to split their halves.
But Islero, the whole idea was all right, well, let's pay, these volunteer rebels. And he's saying, well, let's hang on to it for a little while.
Well, he's saying if I give them the money, they're going to quit the army. So I can't give them the money because the rebellion will be over, which may be just an excuse for him to keep it. We don't really know.
Yeah, it's not great. It's not great. It certainly makes.
We should say that Ben tries to rob a bank, fails spectacularly, rides back to camp, and their plan is that Ben and Amelia are kind of too obvious as like foreigner white people in Cuba. So they're going to send Victor into the train car to nab the money before anybody notices. And they're going to ride horses next to the train, and he's going to throw it out the window to them.
That is the plan. They get on, and there's a little stop, and Fuentes just climbs aboard. One thing that Novus is thinking about is there actual money in this hammock? He doesn't actually know it, and so we don't actually know it. Fuentes sits down next to him, finds him, shoves a gun into his side, and basically just says, look, you're going to listen to me. This is what's going to happen, and you are going to throw the money overboard. There's a little bit of back and forth between Novus and Fuentes, and these guys used to work together, and very clearly Fuentes is, no longer interested in being in the employ of Mr. Raleigh Boudreaux. First he makes him throw his gun out the window, then he makes him throw the money out, and Amelia and Tyler, grab it.
There's also an explosion that Islero's men have rigged part of the track to blow up to stop the train to make it easier to grab the money.
After that goes down, though, there's also, the Tabalera's guys on the train see what's happening, and so the money goes out the window, but soon Fuentes and the guards are, shooting at each other, and a gunfight erupts inside a train car, which is awesome and terrifying. And we don't know exactly how it ends up. We keep moving, and we shift to Osma's perspective, watching everything.
He's kind of on the high ground, watching the train and watching these sides all converge. So we see part of it from his perspective.
Right, and he's looking for a cowboy,
and he sees him. Ben is pretty obvious.
Yeah, he stands out.
This is one scene that the Coen Brothers script version, their train sequence is even more involved. He has Ozma and Ben both on the train, and it's kind of like a big action spectacular. The half of the train gets derailed and is like sliding.
Yeah.
But it's a remarkable scene. He takes that imagery of the prison break where Victor shoots one of the guards. He shoots but the gun is so close to the hat that it lights it on fire.
Yeah.
He has that happen again in the train where the back of one of the train seats is on fire. Like, there's so much going on in that, but it's like very clear what's going on. That's the scene that I wish that the Coen Brothers could have made the movie, just because their version of it was like astounding.
It is crazy. It is one of those, like, I do wonder why. How come it never got made? And
they wrote the script between Fargo and The Big Lebowski, so it was right after Fargo. I don't know the real reasons. I mean, I know that they wrote a bunch of scripts that didn't get made. I could imagine that this would have been an expensive one. It's like a period movie that, just requires expensive locations and costumes and special effects. I mean, it would have had, the main exploding was near the start of the movie. It has a train that needs to be derailed. So I could picture budget being a concern, but I know that they said, oh, we've already wrote an older script, which was The Big Lebowski, so we're just going to do that.
And ultimately they would do a couple of different, True Grit, obviously.
But at this point, they had not done a Western. And I know Elmore, his main criticism of the script was that it wasn't a Western. So to him, Cuba Libre, the book, is a Western, and the script he thought lost the Western characteristics. So
yeah,
I know, the translation to, book to screen, things are going to get lost or changed. So that's one element that definitely is gone.
That's really cool. It's fun to wonder what that would have been like. But there's always talk of Cuba Libre. Somebody, there's always someone interested in it. There's always someone who wants to maybe. So who knows what will happen with that? Hopefully, when it does get made, it lives up to the book.
As we've been talking about, it has a lot of amazing elements. The main exploding. It's got this train scene with the ransom money. It's got the prison break. It really has so many sequences that are like, while you're reading it, you can visualize it immediately.
Yeah, Virgil saving Tyler. I mean, yeah,
they're kind of countless. There's so many. Oh, the at the Inglaterra with Teo Barbone getting shot in the head. There's a lot, and it's one book, and it has so many of these classic scenes. So cutting back, we've got Amelia and Ben and Fuentes are on the run now with this money.
And Osma is heading after them, and some other guys too. Are with them. Osma is watching from afar. He's got a pair of binoculars, which is pretty dope.
And these are the parts of the book that are the most kind of like a Western. It's three people in the wilderness trying to survive, trying to, maneuver their way around these forces that want the money or want them dead, or, they don't want to go into like an open battlefield, because at this point we have the U.S. side bombarding the coastline where there's a fort. And in fact, Tavallera gets caught in that crossfire, and a huge piece of shrapnel cuts his head open.
He's injured, and Osma, he's watching Tyler and Amelia and Fuentes, and it looks like Amelia is sick, and she basically asks Tyler for help. We don't really know what's going on. It doesn't seem like she could have been shot, but she's not well. Osma catches up, and Tyler goes and confronts, and they have a little shootout.
Well, they're on a train. There's like an empty train car that's going to go pick up soldiers, and Ben, Amelia, and Victor think, oh, Amelia's sick. This is our ticket out of here. But they don't know that Osma sees the train and knows that's their ticket out of there. But while they're waiting, before Osma has walked in, they still don't know if they have the money. So they think, why don't we open it up? And there's the line that Ben thinks, he says, what if inside it's just a note that says, you want her? Keep her. Which is basically the plot line of the book, The Switch. So,
right.
So at the beginning, when I was saying that this book is kind of a culmination of so many of Elmore's things that he's done in his career, like there's another example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But so immediately Osma shows up, but Victor says, are you still kissing Tavallera's ass?
Mm-hmm.
Ben knows that this is a bad guy immediately, so he pulls his gun out.
They have a shootout. Ben thinks that he killed Osma.
Yeah, he's certain he hit him at least once.
Right. Catches up with them, and they do have the money. But
Osma, jumped off the train when he got shot, so now he's lost them. He does survive. He kind of crawls back to his sister's house, where Tavallera's getting stitched up.
Tyler, Amelia, and Fuentes are literally out of the woods for now, but it's not over by any means.
They head to, Victor knows some people at a house for lepers called San Lazaro.
A couple of small things that happen along the way. One of them is that Osma knows where they're going.
He knows where the train's headed, and he thinks Amelia is incredibly sick, so he knows that they physically can't move very far.
He clues in Tavallera. Yeah, this is another example of the world continuing to expand. So here we are in a leper colony, where we always thought we would end up. Amelia has yellow fever. I think they say it might be yellow fever, it might be something else, but it seems like she's got yellow fever.
That seems like the most likely candidate. I mean, either way, she's severely ill, so much so that it takes her, I think they say 7 weeks to recover.
She is down and out, and everyone is still looking for them. Fuentes has been keeping an eye out for her. But Osma is circling. Tavallera is nearby. And
Osma and Tavallera are certain that they haven't left this town. They're familiar enough with the kind of ways and means of people traveling around Cuba, and there hasn't been a train that they haven't checked. The roads have been, they've been on top of that, so they think that they're right under their nose, and they've been spending weeks kind of on a stakeout.
And they even talk about how they're probably right here. They're probably very, very close. And Osma heads over to the pharmacy. I don't know. I don't actually remember if he's looking for something specifically or not, but he just he hears one of the clerks talking to...
Oh, isn't he just hungover? I think he's just too hungover. He's looking for a little cure.
Yeah, that could be. That happens in the northern part of Cuba. And he overhears there's an old man who's been coming by, and he typically buys this, but the other day he bought that, and wonder if we're going to see him today or something like that. And Osma, it piques his interest, and
because he knows it's a potential cure for yellow fever. So he hears an old man's been coming repeatedly for weeks, and he is looking for an old man who's been hiding out for weeks.
something's up. So he's going to stake out the pharmacy. The old man turns out to be Fuentes, who has been going, in fact, to buy Amelia her medicine. And after, like you said, 7 weeks or so, she's finally starting to be herself again, get her strength back.
And they're making plans to leave. They're saying, like, this is the last day. Let's, kind of pack up and head out.
Right.
The
and
money
Fuentes,
is safely hidden.
The money is safely hidden. And Fuentes, because he's such a great guy, says, look, you had a rough go here. You're probably better, but why take the chance? I'm going to head down to the pharmacy and get you one last dose of quinine and maybe something else.
Chalmugra oil.
I was looking for my chalmugra oil, and I couldn't find it anywhere. And then I found my 2-year-old was playing with it, which is not what you want.
But I liked in this section, though, that Amelia and Ben say that Victor waves goodbye to them. And Ben says, specifically, it's like he's waving goodbye, and it's something he'd never done in all of his trips to the pharmacy.
Well, right. And also, they also have an exchange where before that, Victor and Ben are talking. They're having a conversation, and he pats his knee and says, I swear it. And he's leaving, and he is waving goodbye.
I do like that this is a very Elmore thing to do, which is to not really have a mystery, to kind of be upfront and tell you things that are going to happen. But because he's so upfront, reading this, I didn't flag this at all. I even though he's making specific mention to like something is different, it's great.
Fuentes heads out very dramatically. Tyler, and who has been trying to figure out with Amelia, like, what are their next steps? What are their next moves? Where are they going to go next? Do they go back to the States? How do they go back to the States? There's the war happening, and one of the things that we learn later on is that the war is happening in different parts of the island in different ways. The U.S. Army and the U.S. Navy don't seem to be totally synced up. Who controls what part of land where it's complicated. And so they are largely staying in place. And as Amelia does start to feel better, they get some visitors. Tyler is out.
Well, yeah, they're waiting. Victor has been gone a while. They kind of think something's up. He's never been gone this long. So Ben decides to head into town to go to the pharmacy to see what's up. At the same time, we have Tavalera and Osma and their men who have been on this multiple week stakeout are now they've zeroed in on this pharmacy. So they're waiting for the old man to come in, who they assume is Fuentes, so they can bust him and then get him to lead them to the money. But Ben is now headed to town, and Ben over these weeks has dressed more like a local, and he's let his beard grow out. So he's slightly unrecognizable to Tavalera and Osma.
He's wearing a straw hat. He's at the pharmacy, and in the distance there's gunshots. There's some sort of shooting going on. He kind of notices it sounds more like fighting than celebration. So they're trying to get a sense of like what is happening, what is going on. They haven't seen Fuentes, and it's either the clerk or the pharmacist who asks about the old man, and Ben's like, well, have you seen him? And so at this point it's clear that either Victor's dead or he's gone. But while he's there, or as Ben is leaving with the drugs, it's basically the pharmacist who yells out, he's here, and Osma and Tavalera have been hanging out, and Ben gets on his horse and starts going, and they start chasing him, and they haven't been to the leper colony yet, and Tavalera is basically saying, like, keep an eye out, like, it seems like Ben is trying to drive them away from the leper colony.
But they kind of realize that even he's heading in that direction, and then they're like, oh, of course, we haven't checked here because we're all terrified of lepers, but that must be where they are. So his plan fails. So yeah, Ben kind of rides his horse past the colony, but Tavalera and Osma just head there.
So Ben has to figure out, okay, how is he gonna? Because there's a bunch of people chasing him. He's all alone.
Ben has ridden past, and Osma and Tavalera and a few men enter the leper colony and start kind of wrecking havoc.
Amelia's been waiting. She hears the gunshots. She's on the balcony. This is not good for a lot of reasons. And so Tavalera basically, quickly, as is his wont, he wants the money, and
he kind of does his old trick, which is he lines people up and he says, "Give me the information, or I'm going to shoot somebody." And we know, since he's done this twice before, that he doesn't usually even wait or get the information he wants. So it's kind of surprising that it's still his move.
And particularly doing it at a leper colony where there are a lot of people in a lot of pain already. It's pretty rough. He does shoot somebody pretty quickly, and Amelia decides, okay, she's not going to mess around. And they have taken the hammock full of money, and they have stuffed it away into a little bit of a, not really an attic, but a store, sort of a kind of an attic, I guess you could say. They go get it, but
Amelia's kind of dragging her feet. She's like, "I'm not going to help this guy get this money out," and he's got to go find a chair to stand on, and so there's kind of confusion at this point. And then at the same time, we have Osma has taken 2 of the Guardias with him to go after Ben.
This is what Osma does. I mean, Osma is slavery did end in Cuba a couple years before. All of these amazing events are happening, but he was a slave hunter, and so if there's someone who could track someone and catch up to them, I mean, this is what this guy did. Ben's in a tough spot. So as he's evading them, Tavalera does find the hammock. We don't know if Victor's alive or dead, but it appears that he did take the money because it's gone. And not only did he take it, he paid someone working there to help him do it, which is he gave this lady $100 to help him repack the hammock as it was and hide it in the same place as it was. Why he would do that, I don't know, but God bless. It worked.
So while Tavalera has been doing this, though, there were 2 Guardias officers with him who are described as peeing in the flower beds. And while they're doing that, a couple of the leper women pull out their machetes and get their revenge.
You're really not in Cuba until you've witnessed a machete murder. So, but
I was going to say, it cuts back to Ben, though, and it has even this part, this is deep in the kind of finale action sequence. There's some funny lines where one of the guards says to the other one, the guys with Osma, he says, "What do lepers eat? I wonder, because I've never seen a fat leper." It's just like, I like that. Even in the 1800s Cuba, you've got the most Elmore Leonard line of all time.
It was pretty great.
Osma decides that they should wait and kind of, they know they've got Ben pinned, so if they just kind of hang tight, he'll eventually ride by and they can snipe him. And they're trying to be quiet, but they end up kind of talking about, Osma says he heard that the U.S. blew up the Maine themselves, and he's like, "I'd believe it." And while they're waiting, Ben rides by very quickly and shoots Osma and kills him. But by this point, it's taking a while, so when he gets back to the leper colony, Tavalera and Amelia are gone.
Amelia's gone. We're not really sure what happened to them, but we do get a chapter, or at least some of us got a chapter, so Virgil we hadn't seen for a while. And Virgil and Neely were, during one of the earlier action sequences on the train, they went in a different direction, and the idea was that Virgil was part of all of this. Ben and Amelia were going to split it 50-50, and then Ben was going to give Virgil half of what he got. And so he's part of this.
And then they cut Fuentes in, so we don't know the final cut, but he was definitely part of the plan.
He was definitely part of the plan. He was definitely supposed to have made more money than he would have as a U.S. Marine, stuck in prison for, I don't know. I suppose if you're a POW, I would hope you get pay.
Well, maybe you get your,
that.
lifetime pension or something.
Get something. Come on. But so Virgil and Neely, they were sort of in charge of handling the getaway. But this is right as things are starting to percolate with the actual war. The warships are coming, and Virgil gets shot, and pretty quickly before the war really starts, before anything. He gets shot, he goes down, but he's okay.
He gives us kind of an overview of like kind of U.S. military activity. Basically that like even though there's a line where Virgil's talking to another soldier, and he says, "They had position on us. They had numbers. How'd we beat them so lopsided?" And the other guy says, "'Cause we're fucking Marines. Why do you think?"
Yeah. I mean, there's
But
a lot.
he gives another. He talks about basically taking Guantanamo Bay, San Juan Hill, what really happened
It's
there.
a lot of fun, and it's nice to know that Virgil does, make it through.
And there's some significant overlap with that short story, the Hurrah for Captain Early.
Yeah.
It's another person kind of saying that Teddy Roosevelt is a little bit of a fraud. Because then that cuts straight to Neely saying some of this stuff to
Right.
Boudreaux at the Hotel Inglaterra.
So Virgil has sort of shared his information with the higher ups. He seems to be like he's in a good spot, although not as wealthy as he might have been for now, because as some of you may know, Virgil does return in the Hot Kid, where he's done very well for himself.
You don't need ransom money when you got
Pecan trees and renting out land to oil companies. You do pretty good. So it ends out well for Virgil, but we don't know what's happening to Amelia. She is back. She's been returned, captured by Tavallera, is how he put it. Not saved. And Tavallera tells her she was in on this plan to steal $40,000 from Boudreaux. And Boudreaux and Amelia are essentially under house arrest.
Boudreaux doesn't seem to care that much, though. He's kind of like,
He and Neely are chit-chatting about it, and Neely asks, doesn't that bother you? And he says, well, he describes the current state of their relationship as they're in a negotiation, basically. And Neely says, oh, it sounds like this is a business arrangement. And Boudreaux's kind of like, well, yeah, to a certain extent.
I like his line where he says, she saw the opportunity and took it. Like, he's kind of impressed.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of, and they are both.
It's why he's a fun kind of bad guy, because he's so different. He really has his own motivations, and like he's kind of, you'd think would be the prototypical evil capitalist, but even when he loses $40,000, which is a lot of money, and he's just like, I've got more.
Yeah, as long as he still has all of his plantations, and as long as the world keeps wanting sugar, he's going to be fine. He's very much a pragmatist. If Amelia wants to come back, or if she's willing to stay, then he's fine with it. And Amelia is still as beautiful as ever, and that's all he cares about, is that she's essentially one of the most beautiful women in Havana, and she's at his side.
And she's interesting. I think he appreciates that.
And he is not in love with her, unlike Neely and unlike Ben. It's a pretty great conversation between Neely and Boudreaux. There's a little bit of, I think, to both of them, a little bit of wistfulness about her, and that it probably would be nice if she did love Boudreaux, but she doesn't. And, well, that's okay. They'll get there.
And then we meet back up with our old friend, though. Rudy Calvo tells Amelia that Ben is a couple days ride away.
Rudy comes by and apologizes, admits that he told them where they were. And he basically said, and I mean, it's clear Rudy has suffered tremendously. I mean, he's basically walking on two canes. I can't remember if his legs were broken or if they just sort of sliced his tendons or something. But he can't walk without. Both of his legs are essentially.
But he does apologize to Amelia though for school.
Oh no, he totally does. But Amelia
She's
sees
like,
okay, clearly, like this guy's been hurt really bad, and then they threaten to basically cut off his kid's legs, and so she's like, yeah, I would have done the same thing. Don't think anything of it. And she's also thrilled to hear that Ben's coming, and what that means, we don't know, because again, Tavallera has pretty much put them. Spain still controls Havana at this point, and Tavallera works, he's part of the Spanish Civil Guard. So he still does have that authority to keep them, basically under house arrest. And so they're stuck there. But we know that Ben's coming. We know that he hasn't run off. Tavallera comes to visit after Amelia gets the news. It's probably a day or so later that Tavellera comes to visit and chat with Boudreaux, and they try to. They're both in a very different place than what we've seen them before, and so that's a really interesting part of the conversation. But they don't really get anything too.
We do find out that Victor, in fact, took the money. I think before this we'd assumed, and we don't know what happened to him, but they kind of confirmed that the old guy got away with it, if you can believe it.
And so Tavellera is there, wondering also what's happening with Boudreaux and Amelia, and Rudy shows up again, basically to say Tyler took the ferry. I saw him about an hour ago, so he could be here really soon. So Amelia is. I mean, it's sort of interesting because she's supposed to be under house arrest, but she's just kind of wandering around the street. Maybe there's not that many. There's enough policemen, there's enough, of the Guardia Civil to keep an eye on her, where if she strolls around a little bit, they're not going to throw her in a cell. She sees Ben, and he gets off his horse. She greets him, and they embrace, and he's got a full beard. He's wearing a straw hat. He looks a little different, but it's him. They're hugging, and they're kissing out in the street, presumably in front of a lot of the Guardia Civil, who would presumably know, like, if you see this Ben Tyler guy, do something about it. But they don't let it stop them. It's very clear they still want to be together. They still want to spend their lives together. But before they do, Ben says, I got to go talk to Boudreaux, and let me just have a chat with him, and then we'll be on our way. He goes in, and Amelia's there, and Ben just wants to get paid for his horses. At this point, it's I think about $4,500, which is it's not 40,000, but it's still a bunch of money in those days. And he basically walks right up to Boudreaux and tells him, "I'd like to get paid for my horses." And he gives him it's $4,545. I mean, it's an exact number.
And it's about $150,000 in today's currency, so it's a lot.
Good chunk of money. And Boudreaux doesn't take too long before deciding, takes out his checkbook and writes him a check. And but even within that, there's some games.
Tavellera tries to shake Tyler's hand, and he says, "We fought honorably, and now it's over." And Tyler basically says, "If you say another word, I'll shoot you. I don't care if I have to go back to the prison." So
yeah,
he squashes that.
He puts Tavellera in his place, and he also...
And we get more from Neely's perspective. What? Turn him down with wit, logic, confuse Tyler with demurring rationalizations? And he describes one of Amelia's... he says, "A glance at Amelia saw her own eyes as cold as the barman's ice." Like even his thoughts are like kind of overwritten with lots of metaphors.
Great that he's there, and he gets a show because Boudreaux, first off, Tyler has he's got some words for Boudreaux. Boudreaux writes him the check, and then as a way of maybe saving face or just continuing to play the game that Boudreaux is always playing, offers him a job running the horses at one of his at his horse farm, I guess. But then
immediately Amelia just shouts no,
and there's an exclamation point, so we know she means it. They're on their way out, but Neely notices Rudy Calvo coming in, and he's not moving quickly. He's got two broken legs, using two canes. Tavellera he's walking towards them, and he's trying to find a place to sit. Tavellera actually is sort of helping him sit down. He pulls out a chair or something, and Rudy gets himself situated. He gets his bearings, turns to Tavellera, and shoots him in the face, and then walks out
squarely between the eyes, which is kind of like Tio Barbone
in the same bar,
same place, same fate.
Yeah. So, if you're in the Guardia Civil, avoid the bar at the Hotel Inglaterra.
But then Rudy just walks out, even though we've talked about the kind of testy political situation with Spain versus America. You can kill the head of the secret police, walk out, get into a carriage, and that's
be on
it.
Your way.
It's not Spain's country anymore, so Rudy will be fine.
Ben and Amelia, they've seen the whole thing, and there's just a pretty classic ending. And this is one of the things that Elmore does. He doesn't do it all the time. A lot of his endings feel like beginnings of new stories or new adventures, and there's something really cinematic about this ending. I mean, it's basically he says to her, "Man, this Cuba," after watching Rudy shoot the guy in the face and just walk off. She says, "Yeah," and he says, "It's going to take some getting used to."
Yeah, ending with a line of dialogue is a classic Elmore move.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, like the scene isn't fully over. We don't know the fate of everyone, but he gives us enough.
Right.
You know.
No, and it's a great place to go out. I love this book. Where would you put it in our dynamic ranking super list?
I'm gonna have to pull up. I started writing it down since we have enough of these books. I like it. I think it has so many great scenes and sequences, but we've read some incredible books. I'm gonna put it above Touch, but I think it's closer to the bottom for me. I can qualify it. It's because I love how different the book is. I think it's more well researched. There's it's a stretch for Elmore, and I think he really pulls it off. But I don't know that Ben Tyler as a character is up there with Stick and Jack Foley and some of the great ones.
Yeah, maybe.
So I think he is a little less interesting. I think Amelia is great, and like there's so many great characters like there always are. Mm-hmm. But I think his version of Cowboy is fun, but not like best character status. What do you think, Judd?
I feel the same way. I mean, I love the book. I think the two. I don't think Ben as strong as, especially compared to some of the other people. He's not Max Cherry. He's not Jack Foley. He's not Stick. And the fact is he's along for the ride for a lot of it. A lot of things are happening to him, and there's so many other people who are driving the action. And so he's not making as many decisions where you can really say, oh, geez, that's an interesting way to do it. A lot of other people are making decisions, and he's responding to them. And it's fun to see a cowboy in that environment and that place. But Ben himself, I don't think, is as strong as some of the other characters we've been within. And I agree. I don't think he's the strongest character. I think Amelia and Boudreaux, even Fuentes and Virgil, I think are much stronger characters just in this book. The other thing, I think it was the thing that I'll call it. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's just. I guess it was sort of an unfulfilled wish from this book was that the caper, the scheme, the crime, whatever, or the heist, whatever we're describing it.
You mean the ransom?
Yeah,
that part?
Whatever we're describing it as, and maybe it just wasn't possible. But I felt like it would have been really cool if it had been more integrated into the actual war. I feel like the war is happening, and we're really far away from it for the most part. Really until Virgil gets shot. And then he's shot from a distance, and it's not an actual.
And even the main explosion is like kind of just set dressing.
Right.
It's a beautiful sequence. It's riveting, and then
it's super important.
They don't really talk about it. The people involved aren't really. Virgil happened to be there, but like we don't learn anything else about it.
Right. And I think if this was a part of history that I knew more about, that I was much more familiar with, then it wouldn't bother me. But because he does write about it in such interesting. He does write about the war so wonderfully that I want to know more about that. And just from a stake standpoint, you have the rising. You talked about earlier, like America is on the rise. This marked the beginning of America on the global stage. You have the Spanish Empire crumbling. It's
kind of the end of the cowboys,
right? If this is a World War II story, or it wouldn't bother me as much because I feel like, all right, I know a lot about that. I've seen a lot of those. I've read a lot of those books and movies. I just wanted to spend more time in the. So if there had been a way to integrate what Amelia and Ben were up to as part of the war itself, that would have been my humble request. But it's still great. It's just I'm thinking about the war the whole time.
We did Touch. We did this one. They're kind of two of the more unusual books in the collection. but I think that's what makes them kind of interesting as well. So
this very much leads to The Hot Kid, which I think
yes,
is,
and it leads from Gun Sight, so it pieces together a few eras.
and I think it's an important book, and it's a great read. But I think just those couple of things.
Yeah, even with the history, it doesn't get bogged down.
No, the history's. I mean, I wanted more of it, So, but I thought it was great, and yeah, if you haven't read it, go read it.
And I wish, we've talked briefly about the Coen Brothers script. I really wish they'd made the movie. I think the strengths of it, where the prison escape sequence, the train sequence, like they're so vivid in the script form, especially the train sequence because they added so much to it. So I think as it is now, it's hard to know since they're writer directors what they would change or what how buttoned up are their scripts before they start shooting it. We don't know what they would obviously have done different or budget would have changed. So it's hard to like fully judge it as a complete object, but the highs are very high in the script. I think it's missing almost entirely the Western aspects that are pretty interesting. This survivalist stuff, the living off the land. That's fully missing, and I think it's part of it's a product of the book is we've gone over the plot. It's long and complicated, and you're gonna have to miss some stuff. But that I did feel was kind of an important part of the book. I think it's what makes it unique. It's that period of as we've just talked about, like not just American history, but like it's
world history.
Like the tail end of the Wild West as well. Elmore's trying to bridge eras of his career, but also, the U.S. history.
There's a lot about it that is, just super impressive, and it would have been cool to see it. And I mean, there's always chatter about, so maybe somebody, maybe not the Coen Brothers, but maybe somebody great will make it. And
this one has a lot of people have talked about doing it, and I think it's because of the same reasons we've said. You've got a prison break, you've got like a train robbery-ish. You've got a bounty hunter who's trying to get our main people. You've got the big main explosion. It's a lot of vivid images.
Yeah, no, there's a ton of great stuff here. We will be back very soon. Our next episode will be an interview with Tom Sharpling. We're going to talk about Freaky Deaky. Thanks so much for listening to the Elmore Leonard podcast. Alex?
Yeah, thanks. That was good. We touch on a lot of things today.
We certainly touch on all sorts of things, and enjoy Cuba. The Elmore Leonard podcast is produced and edited by Judd Rubin. Music by Greg Ahee. Hosted by Judd Rubin and Alex Leonard. Executive produced by Peter Leonard. Copyright 2025, Elmore Leonard Inc. Please visit us at elmoreleonardofficial.com or send us an email at hello@theelmoreleonardpodcast.com.